Hello, and this is Mr. Burns in the Weather Studio doing your fourth spring update. And this is just going to be a quick video. We're just going to look at January's January CET data for this spring. I could have combined it with part 3, done it in part 3, where we looked at sunshine data and precipitation data, because we had one of the driest and sunniest Januaries on record. Even though it didn't really feel like it were where I was, but anyway. Anyway, I was getting tired, I was running low on energy, so I decided to do it as a separate video. So for this fourth update, we're just going to look at January precipitation data. We are falling behind with this update, because as you can see, it's the 1st of March now already, so it's the first day of meteorological spring, and it is quite a nice day actually. Sun's out, it's a bit chilly in the shade, but get out in the sun and it feels fairly pleasant. Gonna look at January CET data. So CET is a temperature. It combines the temperature across 3 sites in England, weather stations, combines the day and night temperature over the course of a month, average it all out, and you get the CET. So this is the longest running temperature series on Earth. It goes all the way back to 1659, and you can see in the early days it was rounded to the nearest whole number, so rounded to the nearest degree, so it wasn't very accurate back then, but you can see as we go further down it gets more accurate, rounded to the nearest half degree, until eventually it was rounded to the nearest a tenth of a degree, which is far more accurate. So in the past, when it first started, it was just a snapshot really of what the weather was like, but once we got to the 1800s, it was much more accurate. We go down to January 2022, which had a central England temperature of 4.6, which is around average, maybe a bit above average, especially compared to the 61 to 1990 average, but probably closer to average for 1980 to 2010 or 1991 to 2020 average. So we're going to look, for this section, we're going to look at January's with a central England temperature between 4.4 and 4.8, and the springs that followed those Januaries post 1948, because we can't go further back than 1948 with the NCAR data set. So I know Gav used to use the what's it called? I forget, but for some reason I can't find that one, so can't get that one to work, so we're using the NCAR data set, which goes from 1948 to present day. To be honest, you know, that's more representative of our current climate, really. And Gav often does like post 1950 as well, as well as like as far back as you can go with the other data set, which is like to the 1830 or something like that. Anyway, enough rambling on for me, let's get on with the video. So the 1st January, with a central England temperature between 4.4 and 4.8, is January 1967. The spring of 1967 looks like this, with low pressure over and just to the northeast of the country. Whoops, that was a bit wrong. That's a bit of a wonky L there, just ignore that. High pressure in the middle of the Atlantic. Winds coming down from like a northwesterly direction. Looks quite a cool and unsettled spring in 1967. The next January, with a central England temperature between 4.4 and 4.8, is January 1968, so the year directly afterwards. This is the spring that followed. We've got northern blocking, a bit of a northern blocking signal, high pressure over Greenland and Iceland, looking at the 500 millibar height anomaly, by the way, with low pressure over the UK, and ridging down to the south and up to the north as well. Again, looks quite a cool and unsettled spring in spring of 1968. Next up, we've got the spring of 1971, with high pressure to the north and west, low pressure to the south, winds in from the east, so quite an easterly spring from 1971. Easterly springs in March tend to be quite chilly. Easterly springs in May tend to be very warm. I don't know how the spring panned out overall, but I guess it was quite cool or chilly in March, but quite warm in May. And probably with the high pressure to the north, the driest weather will be in the north, and the wettest weather will be down in the south. And easterlies are quite common in spring. It is our most easterly season after all. Next up, we've got 1973. So a lot of these years I've noticed, as I've been doing Oh no, there's a bit of a gap there, 1971, 1973, but I do notice a lot doing these updates, you tend to get a lot of clusters of you often get 2 years together when looking at the temperature data set quite interestingly. Yeah, this spring has high pressure just out to our west, low pressure to the east, winds in from a north to northwesterly direction. So the Atlantic is blocked off, low pressure is somewhere away from us, so it looks mainly dry for that spring, but it would be quite chilly with winds from a northwesterly or northerly direction a lot of the time. Quite a long gap then to 1995. So this spring has low pressure to the north and east, high pressure to the west, winds in from a northwesterly direction. Again, looks quite a cool and unsettled spring. I think when Gav did his updates, this spring had was quite a chilly spring. I think there was like snow. Maybe it's late as May, I can't remember. But then I think there was snow in maybe March or April, and then when we got to May, it turned very warm and dry. So a backloaded spring in 1995. Next up we've got 1996. This spring has high pressure to the north, low pressure to the south, winds in from the east, so a very easterly spring in 1996. This is carrying on from the winter pattern, of course. The cold winter of 1995-1996 was a very easterly winter, very cold, very snowy, and that pattern carries on into the spring as well. Very often a spring will carry on the pattern of the winter. Not always though. We did have the spring, for example, in 2020, winter 1920, we had the polar vortex of doom, where it was non-stop low pressure, and then in spring 2020 it was a complete opposite. It was just non-stop high pressure and sunshine and warmth for weeks and weeks and weeks. So that can happen as well. But very often the spring will carry on the pattern of the winter. So if you get an easterly winter, you tend to get an easterly spring. If you get a cold winter, you tend to get a cold spring, and so on. So yeah, if you tend to get mild winter, you tend to get a mild spring. So an easterly winter for the spring of 1996. I can't remember, I don't know what that spring was like. Next up we got 2003. This was a very warm spring, in what was quite a very warm year, I think, with low pressure to the west, high pressure to the east, pulling up the wind from the south. This was setting up the pattern of the summer of 2003. Of course, it was a very hot summer in 2003, especially late in early August 2003 when we broke the temperature record. We got to 100 Fahrenheit in Faversham, Kent, and that record was not beaten until 25th of July 2019, when we got, I think, about 101 Fahrenheit or 38.7 degrees at Cambridge Botanical Gardens in July 2019. What a hot day that was. And finally we've got the spring of 2015. So this one has low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, winds in from the west. It was a westerly spring in what was a very westerly year in 2015, a very benign year, until the very end of the year, of course, when we had that exceptionally wet and exceptionally mild November and December 2015, and all the flooding in Cumbria and stuff. But yeah, quite an average sort of spring. It did have a very dry April though, and very sunny April in 2015. I think it was the sunniest April on record. I'm not sure if that was beaten by 2020. I'm not sure. I think it was. I can't remember. Someone might know the answer to that. But yeah, and then it turned quite chilly in May of 2015, and we had the coldest May since 1993, I believe. So yeah, that was spring of 2015. Putting it all together, this is what it looks like. So we've got 1967, 1968, 1971, 1973, 1995, 1996, 2003, and 2015. We've got high pressure to the west, low pressure to the east, winds in from a northerly direction. So it seems like when you have a January CET between 4.4 and a 4.8, you tend to favour quite a chilly spring, but probably quite a dry-ish spring, with low pressure pulled somewhere away from us, though there will be probably some cool and unsettled weather at times. So yeah, as we've been going along, it's quite a chilly but relatively dry spring favoured when you have January CET between 4.4 and 4.8. So yeah, as we've been going along with these updates, I've noticed there has tended to be a trend towards high pressure, but not always like over the top of the UK, often to the west, like pulling down northerly or northwesterly winds a lot of the time, which is kind of similar to last spring, especially last April when we had a lot of northerly winds. It was a very sunny month, but also quite a cold month as well. In fact, it was the coldest April for 30 years. But because it was so dry and sunny, that helped to offset that. Daytime temperatures for that month were actually close to average for the CET. But it was the nights that made it so cold, with the nighttime temperatures being about 3 degrees above average. So it's the frostiest April on record. It was a very strange month, that one, because it was so dry, so sunny, and so frosty. And what little precipitation did fall was most of it was snow. So very strange month indeed. And it looks like with a lot of these updates are favouring a spring similar to last year, with the cool and dry theme favoured with a lot of these analogues. Let me know what you think in the comments, but that's it for this video. This is just a quick one. As we've finished February, we will look at February data now. So yeah, it has been quite a stormy February, quite an unsettled February. It certainly felt like it anyway. So have a look at February data, and then hopefully we'll release the March forecast in maybe a week or two's time. I mean, a spring forecast in a week or two's time. Hopefully I'll get it done before the start of astronomical spring on March the 21st. But it is, I'm recording this on Tuesday, 1st of March 2022. It is Pancake Day, so happy Pancake Day, everybody. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying these updates. But yeah, that's all for now, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.